Hey guys, what's up? Evan Duarte from Epic Effects here, and today I'm going to show you guys how to give a little bit of realism to textures by using bump mapping. So let's go ahead and just make a new project, and we'll just do something simple here. We'll make a room. So we'll first make our floor by hitting Shift A and add the plane. And then we'll hit S to scale it up, about right there. And then what we'll do is we'll just duplicate this by hitting Shift D, and then left clicking. And then we can rotate it on, I guess, the Y-axis, 90 degrees. And then we hit hold Control, and then we'll just move this along the X-axis. Okay, that way it snaps too. And then we'll just duplicate this wall by hitting Shift D and left clicking, and then we'll do the same thing, hold Control, move it along the X-axis. Very nice. Alright, now we'll just duplicate the floor one more time, and we'll rotate this one on the X-axis. And let's move this back. Too much. Good. Alright, one more time, let's duplicate the floor to make the ceiling. Hold Control and move this up on the Z-axis. Alright, and so now we're ready to go ahead and start doing our texturing. So what we're going to be texturing today is we're going to do like a wooden floor, kind of new wood, glossy, you know, something nice like that. Okay, think IKEA basically. Yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and right click our floor or select it, and we'll go to our material node, or not our node, excuse me, and we will create a new one. And so this just kind of gives us our basic default settings. And also note that I'm using the Cycles render engine to do this. So if you're using a Blender internal, you're not going to see these materials right here. You're going to see something completely different. So just FYI. Okay, so what we can go ahead and do is we're going to go to the node editor. Alright, so we got a couple things here. We've got the final material, and we have a diffuse shader here. So actually what I want to do is just kind of unlink those two, and then we'll hit Shift A to bring up some add options, and we'll go down to shader, and since we want, you know, something that's really shiny and reflective, we'll just use a glossy shader. And what we want to do is we want to be able to use these two in conjunction, but you notice you can't do that with just, you know, you can't send two into one. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a mix shader, and Shift A, go to shader, mix shader. We just bring this up here, and we'll feed the glossy into the first one, and we'll feed the diffuse into the second one. And then we'll just get the mix shader output and feed it into a surface. Okay, and so now since we're going to be using an image texture, we need to add an image texture node. So we'll hit Shift A, and we'll go to Texture, Image Texture, and then we'll take the color output from the image texture. We'll feed it into the diffuse, and then we can go ahead and select the texture we want. Okay, so that's good. And a few things we need to do. We need to add nodes for scaling options and texture coordinates. So we'll hit Shift A. We'll go to Input to get our texture coordinates. We'll leave this back here. Shift A, and we'll go to Vector Mapping. Alright, so what we'll do here is we'll take the output from vector, vector mapping, and then we'll feed it into the image text vector. And then on our texture coordinates, we'll take the generated a little node there, and we'll feed that into the input for the mapping. Okay, and I think that's it. That should be it. Oh, actually, no. One more thing. We need to add a mix node to be able to control our bump mapping. So we'll just go to color mix, and what we'll do with this, we'll just leave it here, and we will take the color. If you just click on it and hold it, it'll make a duplicate line, and we'll feed it into the bottom. Although I don't think it really matters if it goes into the top or bottom, but feel free to experiment. And then we'll take the color output from the mix node, and we'll just move it into the displacement option for our final material. And so this is everything that we're going to be needing to do with nodes for now. So if you're new to using nodes, just kind of copy what I've done here, and you'll be fine. And so let's go ahead and go back to 3D view. Okay. If we have our floor selected, we can see all these new options that we have down in here. And basically everything that we did in the node editor is now ready for us to use inside of this kind of little UI here, this little sidebar. And so let's go, okay, did we already get our texture? Yes. Okay, so let's see. I guess we can go ahead and create our light for the scene. So we'll hit Shift A, and we'll just do a plane, and we'll move this up. And we'll just scale that. And then we'll go with the plane selected, and actually here's one thing we should do. Let's select our light plane, and we'll rename it to light, just because with all these different planes it kind of gets confusing. We'll call that light, and we'll do this. We'll select this and rename the floor plane to floor, and these others you don't have to worry about. Let's see, and actually I think this is just a little bit too. Let's just kind of move this in just to make sure that there's our scene is completely enclosed, so that we're not getting any little black bits coming from the outside world. Okay. All right. And actually, we need to go ahead and move our light then, since we just did that. And we'll just move that to the top. And that should be good. Okay, so let's go ahead and add a material for our light. We'll just go to our material options here and select new. And what we'll do is on surface, we will choose diffuse, or excuse me, emission, and that will effectively turn our little light plane here into a light. And if we just go ahead and go to rendered view and see what we got. Let's kind of zoom in here. Might take a second to render. Okay, so yeah, it doesn't look too bad, but it's not necessarily what we're going for. First off, you notice the planks are huge. I don't know if you can necessarily see this, but you can see where the color changes from this very dark to this white. Well, this bit right here is one plank, so I mean that's huge. So let's just go ahead and go to texture, or no, material. We can just kind of edit these down. And so this is why we are using the on the floor, why we're using that mapping node. so that we can change the scale. So if we go to this, if we go down to the little mapping area here, and we go to scale, we have different options. I think it's X and Y, and this is Z, though I don't think it actually does anything, at least in this case. So we'll just turn this up to maybe 4. Okay. And you can leave this at 1 here. Or, let's see, actually here, a little tidbit. This is where I get all of my textures from Mayang.com. Just a little tidbit so I don't get sued. Okay, and so now that we have this all scaled to how we like it, and it's this texture isn't necessarily big enough, so everything kind of repeats here, but you're not really going to notice it, and so it's nothing to be concerned about. So let's go ahead and go back to rendered. Okay, and we zoom in here. You can rotate that just a bit. You can see what we have, and I think the floor planks are actually still a little bit too big. So I'll change the scale to maybe 5. And yeah, that's fine. Okay, so one thing you'll notice is that our bump mapping is, very extreme. If you look, kind of over here, if you give it a sec to render, you got a lot of, very deep, bump mapping, and that's not necessarily what we want. But we can fix that, and that's actually why we have the mix shader for the bump mapping. That's why we added that in. So what we'll do is, if you look over here, we have this little value. It goes from 0 to 1, and essentially it goes from no bump mapping to complete total bump mapping. So going from 0 to 1, you don't really have a whole lot of space to you don't have a lot of flexibility, you would think. But in Blender, every as far as numbers and values go, every little bit does plenty. Okay, so that's one thing to keep in mind. So we'll just turn this down to about 0. Maybe 0.2, which will change it to 0.200. Okay, and that looks, as far as I can tell, a lot better. You can see it's not as deep. The ridges are, they're not so prominent, not so steep. So that is very good for now. Next thing, let's go ahead and go up to our main shaders, and we will go ahead and start messing with these. We can leave the diffuse alone. We really don't have to use we don't have to mess with that at all, at least in this specific case. Depending on your project or what you're trying to do, it may be different for you. So first things first, at the very top you see this FAC, and this is exactly the same sort of deal how this works down here for the displacement. This is just goes from 0 to 1, and basically what this means is at 0.5 it's a even mix of both the glossy and the diffuse shaders. So you can imagine if you go from that, if you just had it at 0 or 1, it would be either one completely without the other. Okay, and so actually what we want to do is we want to set up the glossy So we'll go ahead and change this to, I think, 1. Or, okay, that's the diffuse, so we'll just change that to 0. And so you can see now we just have a fully glossy material. Okay, and let's see. So let's go ahead and change some settings with our glossy. The only one we really want to pay attention to is the roughness. I mean, you can change the others, but you know, as you see fit, but you generally won't have to. So the roughness is essentially how reflective it's going to be. So you can imagine if we changed it to 0, it would be completely reflective, no roughness whatsoever. Okay. Though that may not be, you know, what you want necessarily. You know, it really just, you know, depends on the scene. So actually, let's go ahead and go to let's change that to 0.5 for the mix, and we'll just kind of see how that looks. And doesn't look too bad, because we're getting that, you know, kind of new wood reflective, you know, shiny kind of floor look that we're wanting. It actually kind of looks like a basketball court, and that's kind of the look that we're wanting. But you'll notice that now our bump mapping has, you know, increased a lot, and the reason for that is the roughness on the glossy has been set to 0, and so it's now what really wasn't defined is now there. It's there to be defined. So essentially the bump mapping was kind of the final result you're getting with the bump mapping was based on how, you know, what this value is showing. Okay, essentially the bump mapping was working with what it had, and now it has even more to work with, just to put it kind of plainly. So but we can fix that. We can just go to our displacement, and actually for something like this 200 is pretty high, so I think we can set it to maybe 100 and maybe even less. It, you know, kind of depends on what you're doing. That doesn't look bad, but still just a bit too much. So we'll change this to 0.05, maybe. Maybe even less. We'll try 0.20. And in some cases, you know, you may want even, you know, less altogether. And maybe what we can do now is, if you kind of notice, now that our bump mapping is decreased, our eye kind of focuses on other things. So it focuses more on the reflection now. So what we can do is we could go to the this value right here, the mix shader value, and we could, you know, lean it more towards the diffuse, so there's less of a reflection. But the problem is that it's not gonna look right. It's gonna just look I don't know really how to explain it. It's kind of like when how do you say it? It's kind of like you know, like in Photoshop, when you decrease the opacity of something that's still really bright itself, it just kind of just looks weird. Okay, so what we'll do instead is we'll just change the roughness, and currently it's at 0, so we'll change it in small increments. We'll maybe change it to 0.05. Just to see how that kind of looks. And I think that's fine. Okay, yeah, so now you'll notice that you get your bump mapping, um, although not as defined and not as extreme, and you get your the reflectivity, but it's neither of them are, super strong. Okay, so you get a very nice balance of the look, and for this case, it really makes it look a lot better. It looks a lot more realistic. Um, and so that's something that's very key when it comes to bump mapping, and just about everything else in Blender, and not just Blender, but other programs too. You don't want to make things so in your face, because a lot of times that just makes it look cheap. What you want to do is, at least for most things, I would think, you want subtleties. Okay, so it's just subtle reflections, how the light works, how it reflects onto it, and how the light shows the bump mapping. Just little things like that, and that'll make your scene look a lot better. So that's the tutorial. That's all we've got for today. I am Evan Duarte from Epic Effects. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Real Epic Effects, and be sure to subscribe. And I'll be back with another tutorial. See you guys later.